From the top.
Take it from the top.
From the top. Welcome to 6-Minute Increments, where we're looking at the intersection between the law, business, and practical life as we come back and we continue with our series talking to younger people who are actually looking to go to law school or are in the process of actually having applied or going to apply. Welcome, Evelyn and Luke, two of our current employees, I might add.
Yes.
Evelyn, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Who are you? Let's get into the mind of Evelyn.
All right. Well, I'm Evelyn. I've been with the firm since September. I'm a legal assistant in the litigation department. About me personally, I guess I've ridden horses my whole life. That's my fun fact. And
now, did you apply to law school yet?
Yes, I am done with the application process. I've committed to a school, sent my deposit in,
Perfect.
So done and
You're
done.
in.
Where are you going?
Pot committed.
What's that?
Where are you going?
I'm going to George Mason.
Got it.
Very nice.
Yep.
Pot committed to law school. So, you're a lost cause. Luke, how about yourself?
Hi, I'm Luke. I am originally from the UK. I'm from England. I migrated here while I was in high school. I have moved around a bit in America, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, pursue as a career, as a life goal. Settled on law. I've been working here at Pullano and Farrow since October.
In what capacity?
I'm a legal assistant in the transactional department. I would like to pursue law school, but I haven't applied yet. I will be applying this next upcoming application cycle, so later this year.
What makes you think that law school is and has anything changed since working at a law firm?
Right. Are you second guessing?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
I would like to pursue law. I like the concept of what the law is. I want to know so much more. I've always had this absolute desire to pursue knowledge. I always want to know more about everything, about what makes the law operate the way it does. How is it represented? What makes a good attorney? Is it, client relationships? Is it marketing? Is it win percentage? How does a law firm run from a business perspective? These are all things just that I would like to know. And law school for me is the way to get there.
What did you used to think about those questions that maybe working at a firm changed? Tonight's opening day at Yankee Stadium, so that was like a fastball right there.
I think working
You're getting a curve.
at a firm made me realize just how business-centered things are, how much finances matter, how efficiency matters, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. If anything, it just made me more curious and interested in the business side of a law firm itself.
Now, Evelyn, I know a little bit more about your background here that you're not quite raising because your dad's a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
And you at one point had thought about going into criminal law.
Mm-hmm.
What are you thinking about that, having now been working at a private law firm? What expectations changed for you or
maybe didn't change?
Or didn't change?
So before I was pretty dead set on criminal. I wanted to go into law enforcement originally for my career and then sort of zigzagged and changed paths a little bit. I'm definitely not dead set on criminal anymore. I will say that has changed. Being exposed to the civil litigation side of the practice, and I do a lot of the estates and trusts litigation at our firm, and that's actually been super fascinating for me. What I think the root of what attracted me to criminal law was, first of all, it's very morbidly fascinating. I think the true crime wave has shown that undoubtedly they're just deeply fascinated by true crime. So I'm definitely that way. But also I really liked the idea of being able to help someone on a really individual level. I'm a people person. So that was really appealing to me, having more of a service-based element to that. But you can absolutely do that through civil litigation. And I think we do every day. So I would be much more inclined to explore different areas of litigation. I do really enjoy like the trial and litigation side of the practice. I like the idea of like constructing an argument with the facts you have and figuring out how to present them in a certain light. And I like all the legal research. I actually really like doing some of the case law research. So I would definitely still stick on that side of it. But I'm very open to doing a different area of law. And I also, working in private practice, I think eventually I would love to have my own firm. I never really considered that before either. Like Luke mentioned, the business side of law just wasn't super interesting to me. But now that I've worked in private practice for a little while, that's much more appealing to me to have my own firm someday.
You open that door. So let's talk about clients. In your current capacity, your current job as administrative assistant, where do you find and have seen that clients think they're saving money, but actually cost themselves more?
I wouldn't say saving money, but I think in litigation, a lot of clients think if they just push hard enough and they get stuck on a number that they think they're owed or they think they deserve. And they're like, well, if we just push them hard enough, or if we keep this rolling, like I can get this $1 million settlement or something that they obviously think they're owed from their perspective, but they don't really understand that continuing first had just how much money it's costing them. The legal fees are kind of abstract to them, I think, until the bill comes. And secondly, they don't understand that I've heard Langston and Christian say this both. The best settlement, like a good settlement, is when both parties walk away unhappy. One takes a little less than they think they deserve. One pays a little more than they think they deserve. And people just sometimes can't get out of their own way when they're fixated on, something that they think they are owed, which maybe ethically they might be. That's a whole other argument. But the higher the principle, the higher the cost. That's another good Christian quote. Like,
Right.
People just tend to keep rolling based more on emotion than the realities of their cases. So I think
You've
that's
done
the biggest
some
area.
evil litigation over
Yes.
the years. What would you say to that, the clients and expectations?
I'm not sure exactly what you're asking.
I always took it that the clients come in with a set expectation in their mind, and the ability to come to a compromise is what actually costs them more, especially in the litigation space.
Right. I mean, the key, and it comes with time, is to manage the client from the outset and constantly manage, because you might
Absolutely.
at one point in time have them firmly grounded in reality, but then they spin out and they forget. And, so you really have to very tightly manage that client relationship throughout the litigation. In terms of expectations of costs and settlement and all of that.
So that, Luke, goes to something that you, who are in the transactional side, we meet regularly, and I know you like technology. You
do.
like the idea, and we've had an interesting conversation about AI. As you embark onto this career, where do you see that the tech will be useful, and can the tech ever do what Beth just said? Manage a client?
I think on that last part, it's very hard for me to speak on that because I've never been an attorney managing
You've
a client.
seen them now.
I think it could play a role. I think AI will drastically change how law firms operate. I think in the short term, it will change the legal practice in the sense that it will make people far more efficient. It will make Brett in 5 years able to do what took 50 of Brett 20 years ago. I don't know if it's going to migrate its way into the law itself anytime soon, but it will definitely change how the profession itself looks. I don't know about the law. I think it will make well-practiced, very experienced attorneys far more efficient. And I think that will make the profession much harder to break into as a young attorney. I think it will make any profession more competitive. And whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. It means that one person can probably take a much larger chunk of the market, which if you're an opportunist, I would say this is great. I think I can be even more successful than I could before AI became a thing. But there's also the risk that you don't go anywhere. I think support staff may not be needed soon. my job, even, I would like to be here for a year and some change longer. I would not be surprised if even by the time that I am looking to move on to law school, the capacity to which I am needed on a daily basis by you guys is significantly less.
So, Evelyn, as you look at George Mason, if you had to go to those professors and you hear that conversation, what would you say that you're hoping that they're going to teach you about the law that you don't currently know or see?
From what I've heard about law school, I think everyone says it teaches you how to think like a lawyer. Not necessarily from you, Brett, because I've heard your opinions as well on this matter. You're a
He's
bit
very
of a
dark on academia.
Yes.
I have lots of academia. I speak from experience.
Brett has never had an opinion a day in his life. I would hope they would still teach you sort of the foundations of how to think critically and think like a lawyer and come at cases from all angles. I hope they would sort of stick to that. But also, I hope they're realistic about where the profession is going. As we were talking about a little earlier, I would be surprised if I got to law school and AI was not addressed at all. So I guess to that, I would say I hope they still teach us the foundations. I would like to be taught, the basics. And I think it is important to know how to do, your own legal research and your own, just so you have that basis of understanding, even if ultimately it will be replaced or automated or whatnot. But
have you spoken to any people currently in law school about what their experience is?
I did this fall. I spoke to a young woman that Aaron Heinz hooked me up with at Syracuse. And
let's go Orange. Jerry's back.
So I spoke with her about that. I think at the time I wasn't even working here yet, so I didn't really even know the right questions to ask about that because I had no idea of what the profession was like. So I was asking much more surface level, what's your workload? What's your lifestyle like? But so yeah, that's my answer to that. Just one.
Now, Luke, we have a couple of young lawyers who just started. They graduated from law school recently. What have you asked them about their experience of what they went through, what they learned? How do you think that's even going to change in the next 2 years?
I think when you speak to most people about law school, all they tell you is that it's very difficult and the bar exam was the worst experience of their life.
Even still after the fact? I thought it was the prep, but then once I took it, I was like, this thing is silly. Why was I that?
Perhaps they aren't far enough removed to be like, it wasn't that bad. I think they speak a lot on how it's primarily just learning the law itself. I know that comes with mixed reviews. I'm actually curious. With the use of AI and technology, do you think that it's more important to know how to argue or know the law moving into the future? Because if in a few years' time, an AI tool can very easily find every relevant case and every relevant law, is it more important to know the laws or to know how to argue them?
In my opinion, the law school idea that you're learning the law is not really what was important in the first place. Why? Anybody actually can go learn the law. It's not secret. It's a public document. So everybody and their brother can go to the internet and pull all of the same information. What I think that you cannot replace, and where I would say you can't even say that you know the law when every year there is a Congress, a state legislature, a county legislature, and every single year they continue to pass new laws. So it's not like you could learn math and math exists. The law constantly changes. So the notion I learned it is not real because you have to constantly relearn it. So I think that what law school has not done a good job doing is actually what Beth and I think you have seen Christian and Langston talk about, which has nothing to do with learning the law or the logic, but how to manage the people. And I would say I'd be curious to see what your experience is going to law school, having now worked in a law firm. Are you going to be willing to challenge your law professor who controls your grading if what you see differs from the reality that you experienced at an actual law firm.
Yes.
Okay. Are you going to be willing to challenge your law professor who controls your grade if what they're saying is different than what you saw practically playing out at a law firm?
Yeah, I think I would too.
How do you
especially
think
now
they're
that
going to
I've
like
lived
that?
it. I don't know.
So from the bar perspective, you guys have heard about taking the bar. What did they say? What are they saying was so hard about it?
I think just volume, the amount
Volume.
of things you have to know, the specificity with like which you have to know them, days, timelines, specific laws.
And then how does the AI change that when you get out to practice?
Well, the way I see it, it's like having a calculator, right? Like it just finds the laws, the section, that whatever you need for you, and then you use what it gives you to then argue what's relevant. So I think, like you said, I think knowing the law off by heart may be less and less important as you go with the use of AI.
I think it's good to have like a foundational understanding of jurisprudence and the history of how, just, basic things.
First year.
I think that's more important than I think you think. Because
Well, I think you should have gotten some of that in high school. So to be fair, what we're talking about is civics.
I didn't take any legal classes.
I don't think it was legal. It was just called like history and civics. But be that as it may.
Be that as it may. And I think that's what the point of the bar is to make sure you have a firm grasp of those foundational things.
I think the bar has changed a lot since we took it.
Oh.
I talked to Danya and Rabia quite a bit in the last few years worth of associates that we've had. The bar they take today, while ours was consistent for people for 20 years prior, is almost a polar opposite from what we took. It is a multi-state, multiple choice primary exam versus the New York State writing.
Wouldn't it be fun if you and I took the bar exam now?
I would love to. Sam.
Let's sign up for it.
I might just for grins and giggles.
How was the bar exam that the two of you took? Like, elaborate a little on how it compares to what you've heard about today's bar exam.
Well, first of all, we had like a little book and a pencil, and we had to write out essays and fill in.
Christian
little
bled
bubbles.
all over his and like smeared his
The
blood
person next
across
to me
it.
puked. So it was.
It was more about a fact pattern tied to New York State law that you had to go through, issue spot, and try to recite what the laws were that were applicable. And say that in that fact pattern you were given, there were 15 different laws, statutes, things that were being implied. How many of them could you get as quickly as possible and then get through like 5 of those? I can't remember if it was 3 or 5, something like that. Mm-hmm. And you wrote this lengthy essay. People had to read the essay. So you were being graded really by another practitioner on your issue spotting capacity. The current test is much more heavily geared points-wise towards the multi-state, multiple choice portion. We had that, but that only got you so far. The New York State part was much more important, more heavily stressed for passing the New York State bar. Mm-hmm. Even your ethics exam, at the time we took the ethics test, New York State had its own exclusive ethics rules. Many in the country had adopted the ABA's model rules. We had not. You are going to learn this like 50-state consistency kind of concept, yet you have 50 states with 50 different sets of rules. So to some degree, I think that the bar prep people are going in a different way than what the state's rights and rules are. So like you're going to George Mason, which is in what state?
It's in Virginia.
So Virginia, you're going to learn a lot of Virginia law. Mm-hmm. I would be curious to see your experience versus, say, if you had gone to Syracuse, how much state versus federal law are you learning? And I think you should keep an eye on that as you move forward. A question, though, I have for you, Luke, as you have done the practical job, what would you say clients could do to actually save themselves money or to speed things along? I think at times you've mentioned in some of our group meetings ideas of how to streamline processes. You mentioned about streamlining processes. What could clients do to save money?
Try and call their attorney less. I think some clients don't realize that they get billed for that time on the phone with their attorney. Email the assistant more. The assistant's the one who is actually responsible for communication with you, between you and the attorney. And generally having more faith in the process itself. We have, let's say we're doing a entity formation in corporate. We have a process that in itself is pretty fluid. And sometimes clients come in, they want to know what's going on, and then they want to do some work themselves because they think it will save them money. And actually all it does is, create more work that other people then have to do. And I think it often ends up just costing them more money. So I think just, trusting the process to which you've signed up for. And also, I suppose looking for a flat fee and making sure that you are conscientious of whether you sign an hourly billed retainer or a flat fee. Just being aware of what it is you're signing on to if you are a consumer trying to save money.
Evelyn, how many consumers that come for litigation do you think understand the process?
I think very few. I think a lot of them, this isn't all of them, but I think many of them, to no fault of their own, they're not all lawyers. And I really didn't know the ins and outs until I started working here. But I think a lot of them come and, okay, something bad is happening. I know this is wrong. This has to be illegal. And stuff. They come in with these ideas that something bad has happened to me and I'm owed XYZ. And then once we get into the nitty gritty, it just, everything takes quite a while. We're moving through the court system. We're not the only case in the court system, and their case isn't the only one the attorney has. So I think very few of them come in with a realistic idea of what the process is going to look like, because things just take time and things can change. You're really only in control of like one side of the issues on litigation. You can control what you do for your client, but it's adversarial inherently, and the other side could pull a wild card. They really could do anything. So I think very few, to answer your question.
How do you think you're going to incorporate that someday into your private practice?
I think kind of like Beth touched on earlier, it's all about managing client expectations on the front end. I've listened in on many of Christian's initial calls at this point.
He doesn't want us to talk to him anymore.
He does a really good job of, from the outset, just explaining the cost, explaining if we were to take this on, here would be my first steps, and that's what that would look like. So I think it's just making sure people go into this really knowing what they're getting themselves into before they even retain someone, and not just sort of fluffing them up to be like, yes, I'll go to bat for you, and this is $1 million case, like say I will advocate for you, but really try to lay the realistic groundwork for them before you even start.
When you have talked to the young lawyers who've graduated, what did they talk about their classroom experiences were like? What was the format in which they were taught?
I haven't gathered all that much information on this, but from what I've heard, they talk about very much like a lecture format. Yes, just being taught, listening, writing down.
That is, in my opinion, the single biggest difference between those who have gone recently and what we went through.
Yeah.
And I think that will be something that you should approach very cautiously, because it makes you think that you know the law. All litigation, at least half the parties disagree with the outcome, or they wouldn't have ended up in litigation. So the notion that it's just a settled opinion doesn't make sense if you're going to have courts.
Right. Well, the way I've kind of interpreted it is that if you're an attorney, you are representing the law, and so if there's an attorney on either side, that means the law can be represented in two different ways,
right.
Which means there is no definitive right answer. And if I'm sure there are many, many examples of where very, very similar cases can go either way. That means there is no definitive ruling or law. It can be argued both ways.
I mean, the counselor's job is to argue something and understanding how to do that, which is where I would say the lecture format that, like, here's the law, write it down, doesn't help to train you for that. So as you get into school and maybe push your professors, see if they can argue the opposite of what they are telling you, because somebody did. So I know that we've always got to get ready for always be billing. But if you had one thing, Evelyn, as this is going to be recorded and you can go back in time and see this, that you would want, as you sit here having now worked at a law firm, what do you think you would want to remember as you look back 4 years from now after you will have sat for the bar? What do you want to tell your future self?
I guess I would like to tell her that at the end of the day, law is always a service profession. And just to keep that at the core of whatever area of law I go into, because you may have gone through 3 years of school and gotten the JD and everything, but you have a client and your ultimate goal is to advocate for them and never lose sight of the fact that it's a service profession and you should gear your efforts towards your client.
And Luke, for you, you're going to start out your career, haven't gone through law school yet, you got a lot of things to do still. What would you tell your future self is your goal now? And maybe you'll see how it changes.
And we'll have you guys come back in 4 or 5 years and
we'll play this on a big screen.
Yep.
And you'll see yourself and be like, wow, I can't believe
We'll
I
all
said
cringe because of how we sound on a recording.
Never be afraid to not follow what everyone else is doing. Be innovative. And know that you can always make a difference. Whether that's in the world or with people. Yeah.
Very good.
I like it.
I like it.
Thank you very much, both of you, for coming and participating today. We will make sure that we watch your journey with great intrigue.
Yes.
Thanks for having us.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Please like, share, and subscribe.
Tell your friends, tell your enemies.
Tell your enemies.
All right. Thank you.